Welcome back, everyone. This is Justin Freeman, and in our last video, we talked about expected points added and success rate as being two very important metrics that we need to learn in order to call offensive football. And so today we're going to look at how we might apply those principles that we defined in our last video and exactly how we might utilize those things. So we're going to dig into some really cool research that's been done recently by Josh Hermsmeyer. And Josh has taken some really good raw data from Sports Info Solutions and merged that with our expected points model that was created by Ron Yurko. And throughout this presentation, I'm going to quote some NFL data that's courtesy of Pro Football Reference. So I want to make sure those guys get the credit on the front end for being the brains behind this operation. I'm going to try to present this in a way that'll hopefully make sense for you as a coach and a play caller, and a way that you can take something away from this raw data and become a little bit more optimal in the way that you approach things. So to start off with a little brief refresher, what is success? A successful football play is simply one that generates positive expected points. So we talked about how you're either getting better or getting worse every play when it comes to your opportunity to score points during that drive, and successful plays are the ones that generate positive expected points. And success rate then becomes simply the percentage of those total plays that were positive. So for example, we wanted to know our success rate on 1st and 10 last year. Well, we could look that up and say, well, we ran 100 such plays on 1st and 10. Of those 155 were successful. They generated positive expected points. 45 then on the other hand were unsuccessful. That generates a 55% success rate on 1st and 10. And so with that general concept of success rate based on categories, success rates based on a certain situation, we're going to dig into Josh's research to try to find some takeaways based on down and distance and men in the box as to whether we should be running or passing the football. And so when it comes to whether we should run or pass, it kind of comes back to this notion of offensive balance. And I believe, if you're a coordinator, when you think of offensive balance, you probably think of a 50-50 balance, right? That, you should be passing the ball just as often as you're running it. That's what a balanced offense looks like. Well, that makes sense. However, what if these two objects on this particular seesaw here are not exactly weighted the same? Because what we actually know about the passing game is that in general, it is a more successful play, regardless of down and distance. If we just look at it cumulatively, a passing play generates a higher success rate and it generates more expected points on a per play basis. So not only is it more likely to succeed, when it does succeed, it generates a higher number of points than the running game. So we have an uneven scale here, but we can still make it balanced. We have to just sort of change what our perception of balance looks like in order to weight those things evenly. So let's dig right into Josh's chart here. On this particular thing, let me get you oriented. The first thing I would like to call your attention to is this bottom axis, the horizontal axis, defenders in the box. So you'll see 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 defenders in the box. And the idea here is to basically determine, are there any situations where our run-pass decision could be affected by the type of defensive front that we're playing? And Josh did a lot of work to determine, is defenders in the box actually the right thing that we should be focused on? Should we be focused on advantage? How many offensive players in the box compared to the number of defensive players in the box? And Josh really sorted all this out and determined that really defenders in the box gave you the most signal as to what was actually actionable data. And then we're going to look at our vertical axis. Vertical axis ranges from 0 to 100%, and that's our success rate. So, a 0% play would never work. A 100% play would always work. Basically, every other play that we have is going to be somewhere in the middle there. You'll see that we're typically hovering anywhere in the 30 to 50% range, depending on what our situation is based on down and distance. And then lastly, we're going to look at the play type. So in this particular instance and throughout our show here today, you'll see that the green line is going to represent dropbacks. And to refresh your memory, a dropback is not just pass attempts, but also sacks as well. So your green line is always going to have baked into it, some of those negative expected points plays that generate from sacks, because we know that sacks can be drive killers. And then here at the bottom of your screen here, we're going to summarize exactly what it is that we're looking at. So in this particular instance, We're just looking at 1st and 10 plays. We're looking at 1st and 10 plays that are not in the red zone, and the score has to be within 7 points. Either the offense is trailing or up by no more than 7 points. And so this keeps us looking at sort of apples to apples plays to one another. That we're not looking at a team who's, chasing 3 touchdowns and they're throwing from behind, and we're not looking at teams that are up 3 touchdowns and trying to salt away the clock. So this is what we call a neutral game script situation. And so to dig right into his chart here, you'll notice that the green line is consistently above the yellow line here on 1st and 10, which means that the drop back is always, versus any of these fronts, going to be a more successful play than a run. And so what do we take away from that? If we know that a drop back is more successful than a run on 1st and 10, no matter the defensive front, should we then be calling a drop back on 100% of our plays? Well, the answer is no, because we know how much benefit comes from catching a defense off balance. We can't become predictable. But yet we also don't want to be 50-50 either. Because if we're simply 50-50, then we're not giving ourselves enough credit to take advantage of the extra benefit that's gained by dropping back and throwing the football. Like if you look at 7 men in the box, there's roughly 20% difference between success rate from dropbacks to runs. That is significant. If I told you that a play was 20% more likely to keep you on schedule, are you telling me you wouldn't be dropping back and taking those 20% to the house? You've got to pick up on these winning edges. And so we talked about that in our last video, that the whole point of being a coach is to pick up on these winning edges. So what do we do with that? What's the optimal ratio? To simply answer that, we don't know, but we do know the answer is more. We need to be throwing the ball more on 1st and 10s than we're running it. And if you look at our 2017 data, you'll notice that 53% of the time last year, coordinators opted for runs as opposed to pass. So it's a 53-47 split in favor of the runs, despite the run being anywhere between 10 to 20% less effective than throwing the football. So I think we need to think about how we're going to approach that. My ideal solution would be somewhere in the neighborhood of a 70-30 split in favor of dropbacks on 1st down. Moving on to 2nd down, we're going to kind of categorize 2nd down into different distances: 2nd, long, medium, and short. And so right now we're looking at 2nd and long. So 2nd and 7 to 10 with those same parameters. Once again, you'll notice that drop back is consistently better than the run as far as predicting successful plays, regardless of the number of men in the box. What do we do with this information? Once again, we should be throwing the ball more than we're currently throwing it. If you look at 2017 data, we've got roughly a 60-40 split in favor of the pass. However, it's obviously still producing a winning edge for dropping back and throwing the football. So we could be doing even more than the 60-40 split on 2nd and long. And it makes sense, right? Because on 2nd and long, we're either looking at 2 highly successful rushes to get us that 1st down, or possibly 1 pass that could bail us out. So we definitely want to be throwing the football very, very favorably on 2nd and long. 2nd and medium, things get a little bit different. You'll notice that the width of these bands around these lines begin merging into one another, and these bands represent confidence intervals. So basically, how confident can we be that the number that we're showing with our line is accurate? And so the fact that they're bleeding over into one another means that we can't truly significantly tell you that one is better than the other. You'll notice that the drop back does have a little bit of an edge here on 2nd and medium, but it's really not enough to be overly concerned about. So let's call 2nd and medium dealer's choice. You should be really pretty close to a 50-50 split on 2nd and medium. And it more or less is. We'll see that 48% versus 52% for rushes and dropbacks in 2017. On 2nd and short, it really is even more so dealer's choice. Until you get to 8 men in the box, we actually do get to pick up an edge against 8 in the box on 2nd and short, where dropping back and throwing the football gives us a little bit of an edge. We also know that 2nd and short is just really a favorable down and distance in general. It's a really high percentage success rate situation. We get an opportunity to throw the ball deep downfield if we want to. We could go down and distance for trick plays, gadget plays, and that type of thing. So 2nd and short, really the whole playbook's open. Third and long we know is a passing down. However, we do get a little bit of unusual, unconventional information here in our 3rd and 10, 3rd and 7 analysis. And that is because of the element of surprise and the sheer lack of quantity of plays as it relates to running the football on 3rd and long. But we try to stay out of this down and distance, and we do know that throwing the football typically seems like the most logical thing to do. However, there is obviously an edge to be gained in the occasional handoff and the results that can yield. If we look at 3rd and medium, we'll notice that the run is certainly more favorable than the pass when we're facing these light boxes. And once we get to 7 and 8 men in the box, it's really statistically insignificant as to any edge gained one way or the other. But we do know against those light boxes, we want to take advantage and run the football on 3rd and medium. So if you can send your quarterback to the line with the opportunity to check into a run on 3rd and medium based on the front they're seeing, that'd be a significant advantage that you could take with you. And on 3rd and short, we really should be running the football unless we're seeing a stacked box on 3rd and short. Even against 9 in the box, we have a slight advantage by running, but feel free to have your quarterback check out at the line in that particular play. But you should know that 3rd and short should be a running down. Was it? Not really. In 2017, there were 379 rushes versus 494 dropbacks on 3rd and short, despite running the football being more effective. And on 4th down, regardless of down and distance, we get some fairly unconventional results here as well, that running the football is typically going to be a little bit better against more normal fronts. However, we got a lot of error in there that keeps us from being able to make really good and really sound decisions that are driven by logic. So I think what you're going to hopefully take away from this particular analysis that Josh has done so well is that quite often the way that we call games, the percentage of runs and passes, doesn't really mesh up with the success rate that is generated by those particular play calls. Why are we running the ball in situations where we're more likely to be successful passing the ball? That doesn't make any sense. Why are we passing the ball in situations where we're more likely to come out on top if we run the ball? So what are we going to do to change this? We have to first be aware of what it is that we're seeing, and we can kind of confront this in a couple different ways. Well, first of all, football is not blackjack. Blackjack has very firm rules as to how to properly play it. If you've got a 16 versus a dealer face, well, that sucks, but you should be hitting that card no matter what according to the math. Well, football, you can't just sit back and play the same strategy every single time. But what you can do is lean on tendencies based on this information. And this will allow you to gain that winning edge that you're looking for as a play caller. So what is the takeaway? The takeaway is we really need to devote some of this to memory. We really need to know that 1st and 10 is a passing down. We really need to know that 3rd and short is a running down. We really need to know when it's in our advantage by a significant margin to be throwing or when to be running. And listen, you've got your whole playbook open. I'm not telling you which pass play to call or which run play to call, and I know they're not all created equal. However, you've got to understand that you want to stay on schedule and you want to add to your expected points. Now, like I said, every play, you're either putting yourself in a better position to score or a worse one. It takes 5 yards on 1st and 10 to basically be in as good of a spot as you were before 1st and 10. It takes a 2nd and 5 to be as good as a 1st and 10. Beyond that, it takes a 3rd and 2 to be as good as a 2nd and 5. So you really need 5 yards on 1st down, 3 yards on 2nd down to stay on schedule. So when you think about it that way, 5 yards on 1st down, how many run plays do you get in this averaging 5 yards of play? That's why passing the football on 1st down makes so much sense. I want you to think about what that proportion might look like in your offense and utilize that. Take these winning edges and put them into practice. And like I said last time, Philadelphia Eagles, Doug Peterson had a man in his headset telling him success rates for run and pass on demand. So this information is significant. It does provide a clear winning edge that you can take advantage of. So if you want to leave this information on the table and not use it, that's to your own detriment. The numbers are simply data. It's not I'm out here trying to make a particular point to get you to throw the football more than you're comfortable with. but the data supports a more aggressive play calling situation than we're currently seeing coordinators use. So the teams that are picking up a winning edge are taking this math and running with it. So I appreciate your time, and I appreciate you tuning in, and I appreciate you having an open mind and listening to an analytical viewpoint on how we might possibly make the game of football more successful. So if you're interested in having a more successful offense, I'd encourage you to devote some of these down and distance success rate graphs to memory. Know what is the more optimal situation in each particular unit. It could really bail you out that if you follow these success rates more closely than the other teams that you're competing against, it's going to place you in a better chance to succeed. So once again, thanks for tuning in. Definitely want to give credit to the researchers Josh Hermsmeyer and Ron Yurko and the people over at Sports Info Solutions for providing the information. Thanks everyone for tuning in, and hope to see you soon.